check, check.
Little technical difficulties with the sound checks. Sorry about that, folks.
Hold that for that's good. Okay. Is he gonna speak? Okay. All right.
Thank you. Why we're doing this, and then I'm going to hand it over to Paul. So if anybody has school-related questions and issues, they'll have an opportunity to address those with him before he has to leave. Paul, what's your hard stop time?
Yes, this is okay. I'll leave here 6:10 at the very latest.
Okay.
In order to get to Sanger for the all-county band concert that's tonight. So anybody who wants to go with me, you'll see a great show if you decide.
Yeah, if you, so I had the pleasure of having my now 21-year-old son was big in the band while he was here. If you haven't heard the Escambia County School Bands, you are missing out on a big part of Escambia County because they are truly amazing. All right, so so again, thanks for coming out. So the purpose of the town hall is that, in my opinion, we should have done these first. Okay? When you have this massive, overarching activity that's going to affect people's lives for a very long time, you really need to engage the people. Okay? Board of County Commissioners chose to go a different route. We talked amongst ourselves. The idea of pulling Precinct 105, Inner-Arity and Perdido out of District 2 had been floated, but it was literally laughed at when it was floated. So quite frankly, I was surprised that it ended up getting the kind of traction it did and becoming a part of the board's proposal. So a couple of things that we did and how the board did what it did that gave us these results. And so, we've got our current districts, which you all know and love that we've had for a while. These are the commission proposed districts. And then this one is sort of an idea of really what could have happened or where we could go if we approach things differently. Okay? Like, I'm a military guy. We started in with commander's guidance, right? So you kind of set down your priorities of what you want to achieve, what your constraints and restraints are, and then you start your decision-making process. That's not really how things happen in local government, unfortunately. But the smart thing for us to have done would have been to sit down with the people, have meetings like this all around the county, and talk about what your priorities are. Yeah. We all know that in a government like ours, or representative government like ours, not everybody's going to get their priorities met. But we should at least recognize what those priorities are. Discussion about what our priorities were.
And I can definitely talk to the back of the room, but because we're live streaming this for folks who are still unable to come out, I want to make sure that we as much of this available to them as well. So we focused on the majority-minority district. We focused on where the incumbents live, and in fact chose not to move things or move this that way or that way because of where an incumbent lived. Now, if you look at our current map, there's some kind of weird things about it. I know that just about everybody in 95, not just about, I'll rephrase that, lots of people I've spoke to in Precinct 95 have always wondered why they're in District 1 and not District 2, when all of your equities and your lifestyle is very much Perdido-centric, okay? But that's not the worst of them that was put into a district for, because of incumbents or because of the political will of politically powerful. Look at this little anomaly right here. The only precinct south of that road was there because there was an incumbent that lived there, okay? And that incumbent was gone a couple of years later, but you're still stuck with the weird map, okay? So again, where the incumbent was located was very important to the board. I believe it should be one of the least things in our minds because this isn't about us, it's about you, it's about your neighborhoods, okay? So what I tried to focus on is a couple of things. I tried to focus on, first and foremost, keep the neighborhoods together, okay? If you don't live on Perdido Key, but you live somewhere out on Gulf Beach Highway, 95, and Precinct 95 maybe, up Bower Road, and people ask you where you live, you say, out by Perdido, right? Or you give a street name or a neighborhood name and they say, where's that? Because people downtown have no idea where our streets are. And you say, out by Perdido. Okay, so our lifestyle out here, whether you're on the island or off the island, is very, we have equities here that we pretty much share. And so we should try to keep those neighborhoods together. The same is true in places like Mayfair and Warrington and Myrtle Grove. People tend to was more important to me than mine tonight, okay? And I really want to make sure that we have an opportunity for everybody who wants to speak on this issue, has an opportunity to do so, being live streamed, and then the videotape becomes part of the public record, so that regardless of what the outcome ends up being, the voices of people will have been heard and will be a part of the public record on this discussion. Now, some people who would come here tonight but said, what's the point? They're going to do whatever they're going to do. Okay? And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's true. Okay? In this case, I do believe that if the citizens speak up, if the citizens go and talk to all of the commissioners and say, we're on a bad path here. This isn't the path we want. And if all of the commissioners recognize that they got this backwards because they didn't put your voices first, there's a chance that we could turn this off. Okay? This does not legally have to be completed before the next election. Now, I think we had plenty of time to do it right. But you know what they say, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, where are you going to find time to get it right the second time? Okay? So that's kind of the battle rhythm of what we're going to be doing tonight. Because Paul's here, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that, okay, the school board and the Board of County Commissioners, they do the precincts and districts. They don't have to line up. It's not required by law. It certainly is easier if it does. But one of the interesting things that, going back to that incumbent argument that I heard, when we were up there on the dais and they were doing all the carving of the proverbial turkey here, had members of the school board counting how many schools are in my district now? How many, well, no, that moves this school out of my district. Okay? Which is really weird, because when I sat down with Paul in his office when this first started and we started discussing what we thought was right, that's exactly the opposite of what Paul had told me. He said, Doug, I don't represent schools, I represent parents and children. And it doesn't matter to me where those children came from, or where they went to school, where they spent their time at school, or where they went to after school. I represent parents and children, not schools. So again, the geographic aspect for them, not nearly as important as the human aspect. So, Paul, why don't you come on up and let me just hand the microphone over to you a little bit. You can talk to him. I took a little bit of yours, but
This is not working, so.
and then just open up the floor for any questions they have for you, so we can get that done before you have to go.
As Doug had said when we met, the school board and the Board of County Commission do not have to have the same lines for voting purposes. 10 years ago, when the Board of County Commissioners and the school board got together, the David Stafford's office, the supervisor of elections, said a lot of people get confused. They go to the voting booth and they look at their voter registration, and they're in District 1 for this, and they're in District 2 for this, or they're in District whatever. And there's a lot of confusion, and the ballots become very difficult to get in the right hands, because which voting district you are in could change ballots in any precinct. There could be 5 or 6 or 7 different ballots depending upon those issues. So the school board decided back at that time, more than 10 years ago, to align with the Board of County Commissioners to make it easier for the election supervisor and the public to understand, if I'm in District 1 for Board of County Commissioners, I'm in District 1 for school board. When you come to vote, what was said, and I'll say it again and again and again, and I said it in those meetings at the commission office, where those lines are drawn for voting does not make a difference on school attendance for children. So all of you who are planning to have more kids, you don't need to worry that they're going to be moved to some other school. The school attendance zones are completely removed from this process. They have nothing to do with it. If your children, grandchildren, foster children, whoever you care about who still attends school, go to Helen Cairo now, they'll continue to go to Helen Cairo regardless of where lines get drawn. Okay? If they go to Pleasant Grove Elementary now, they'll continue to go to Pleasant Grove. What we're trying to do is make it easier for people to understand which district they're in for voting purposes. Now, when it comes to the school board and all of the training that we get from the Florida School Boards Association, you are elected. I am elected by district. I am voted in by the constituents in District 2. But once I am elected to the board, I represent every school and every child in Escambia County. So the idea that some people say, well, that's my school, that's my school. No. When you get elected to the school board, regardless of which district you reside in and represent, for voting purposes, you represent the entire school district, every school, every child. Does that make sense to people, or did I add any confusion? So any services for schools that you currently receive will not change based on anything that happens with the lines. It does make it better for voting, for understanding, and for those things, and for the supervisor of elections office, but it doesn't mean anything when it comes to the schools and services you get from schools. I know that you really came to hear Doug and what was going on with the Board of County Commissioners. The school board is set to adopt whatever lines the Board of County Commissioners sets forth, okay? And that's kind of been the way things from the school board have been advertised. Although we are required to do the same things, to draw lines, to have a public hearing or public forum, take input, and then to advertise and adopt, the precedent is set and the expectation is we will do exactly as the Board of County Commissioners does. unless there was some major reason to do it, and quite frankly, there really isn't. So, yes, sir.
Question on the proposed districting, does that affect you in any way?
No, where we are now.
Paul, for the benefit of the film, could you repeat the question?
Oh, does any of these maps affect me? No. I live in Myrtle Grove. I've lived there for 38 years in the same house, and I will continue to live there. So Myrtle Grove is smack dab in the middle of District 2, no matter who carves what other things around it. But I will maintain that, and I will be running again, but this isn't a political forum. So, but yes, I am there. And I think that Doug is right. We don't need to look at where people live when we make decisions like this. What we need to do is say what makes sense for the voters, what do the voters and constituents want, and then if you get moved, if I was put into another district, my option is to run in that district or to move, whatever. And that's kind of harsh. I don't believe that I could convince my wife to move after 38 years. At least not both of us. She's going to stay where she is. Anyhow, any other school questions? Yes.
Did the school, I was under the impression, thanks Paul. I was under the impression, this is labeled commission proposed districts, but of course this map was the result of negotiations among the commission and the school board. And the straw vote was taken at that time with the anticipation that it was going to be ratified. Am I mistaken that the school board has already voted on this map through? I'm sorry, because I was told that today, and now it sounds like it might be wrong.
Yes, no. Okay, it's wrong. The school board took action to advertise what is there, but the school board is ready to make the change because the Board of County Commission, the commissioners will do their last vote December 2nd. So we have time to then make the changes to what we advertised for our December 14th or 16th meeting. Our December meeting comes on the third Tuesday of the month. Our board meeting is the third Tuesday. Now it's going to be moved up a little bit because of Christmas, so maybe the 14th. But no, we have time to change what is done. What we advertised was a tentative lines, knowing and stating that if the Board of County Commissioners changes their lines, our lines will reflect theirs.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. The way that I understand it with the VOCC is that they have to have a proposed map that stays static for 30 days and 2 public hearings on that. And if that process doesn't happen, the redistricting does not take place without a static advertised map for 30 days. I believe that's correct. And so is the school board following the analogous approach? And so what you all voted on was to put that proposed map out there.
Okay, the difference comes in here. The Board of County Commissioners has to have their lines drawn by the end of an odd number year prior to whatever or something else. The school district's requirements are different. We must be finished by the end of this calendar year. So in December, if things blow up with the Board of County Commissioner and they have no new lines, we have to either vote to stay with what we have, vote with what they're proposing, hoping that they're going to do that in the future, or whatever. But the school board must have our lines adopted by the end of this calendar year. There is a difference. And Doug, I don't disagree with what you said about time to get stuff done. But actually, the census data that we have to use for doing that came very late compared to previous times. We were promised to have it in July or August and didn't get it until, what, October?
Yeah.
So there really was some difference in that we should have had it months before and done the things that Doug has proposed about having the meetings and talking to constituents and things. But it couldn't happen because the election supervisor didn't get the stuff from the census people until months later than they were supposed to. Okay? Now, there is one thing, and this is school board stuff that may or may not mean anything to you unless you have high school students or grandchildren. But there is a memorandum of understanding coming to the December board meeting. It's an agreement between the University of West Florida and the school district to place dual enrollment teachers at Escambia High School. All right, this is different in that in the past, students who wanted to do dual enrollment over so many hours would always have to go to either PJC or UWF to get those classes. This is going to bring the UWF instructors to Escambia, which will open up a lot more dual enrollment, more stringent, higher demanding courses with the ability for our high school students at Escambia High School to graduate with an AA and or college credits already earned and paid for by school and not by parents or the students. So that's a good thing. That's some good news and something to look for. Been working on that for about a year and a half. All right. Yes, sir.
Paul, do any of these alternative redistrictings have any effect on the charter school that's planned to go into the Pensacola State College campus in Warrington?
No. The question is, do any of these affect the proposed charter school that's coming forward from PSC and the military at the PSC Warrington campus? The answer to that is no. Again, these lines don't mean anything. And with the charter schools in particular, a student can attend any charter school regardless of where they live, as long as they meet the criteria for that charter. See, that's the thing too that may not be understood, and I don't want to add confusion and get into a lot of the things with that, but most charter schools, their charter states who they intend to serve, okay? And so there's somewhat of an eligibility to get into a charter school, and as long as the student meets it regardless of where they live, they can attend any. Yeah, and so there's nothing about that. There may be some capacity issues. They may fill up and say they can't take more than 100, and they would cut it off then, but that's it. I thank you all. I thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time. And if you have questions, all you would have to do for the school board side is go to the Escambia County School District website. There's a school board page with my number and an email on it. Okay? Thanks, guys.
You guys, I'll say, since we're off on a little bit of a tangent there, and those that are not interested in the school situation, I apologize, but I'm a very outspoken critic of Escambia County Public Schools. I believe that we can do a whole lot better for our children, and we just come up short. But I will tell you that what he just described of having UWF instructors and this idea of being able to get college credit before you graduate high school, this is the single most important thing that's happening in the public education realm. The biggest impact on the cost of higher education, okay? Because you're taking these kids, they're graduating with an AA or pretty close to it. They're not spending their first 2 years and the first $20,000 of your money to get those basics done. And what that means is when they go to college at 18, they've got the basics out of the way, they know how to conjugate a verb properly, and they're able to spend their time there on an education that's actually worth the kind of money that you're spending, and learning the things that they did, not just rehashing things that they should have picked up in high school. So that is something to really kind of embrace, that is a really positive change for America, the more that we can see that happen. So, all right, so back on to the subject at hand. So think through some of that you heard what Paul was saying, that there's some deadlines if we want to change, okay? But one of the things that we should always recognize is that when you find yourself up against a wall, right? When you find yourself being forced into making a bad decision, never forget the no-build solution. Never forget that, you know, the more you get backed into a corner about, well, we got all these deadlines and we got to do this by that time, and that time, there's no reason for us to do something so drastic as this because of a deadline, because what we're starting with is phenomenally better than that proposal. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that we need to can this and go to this, because here's one thing that I'll tell you what's infinitely wrong with this. This was just my ideas and a couple people close to me and staff. Okay? So I don't want something that's just my ideas. Okay? So for that reason, this isn't ready for prime time either. Okay? The smart play for us now, if this is the best that we are able to come up with, then we need to go ahead and stick with what is already working. Okay? So I would recommend to anybody who believes that, you need to make your voice heard. Very emphatically. That's going to be letters to the editor at the PNJ. That's WEAR. That's talking to your friends, because you know as well as I do that for every person here, you've got about 10 friends at home who don't really kind of go to those things because they're not really involved in politics. Let me tell you about that, folks. Everybody who says they're not involved in politics needs to remember that politics is deeply involved in you and is making decisions that will affect your life for a long time. So if you believe that what we've got now is better than what's being proposed, make your voice heard adamantly to all 5 of the county commissioners, to the press, and to your friends, and encourage your friends to do the same. So, I've been talking quite a bit. My biggest goal out of this is to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? What should we be doing with regard to the redistricting? So,
Just a quick question to where did we get here? So, my understanding from just quick research was that this came about because of the census data and they were trying to even out populations amongst the district. Is that true?
that is correct.
Is there any legal requirement to do that?
There is a legal requirement to look at it. You are not required to redistrict if you are within reasonable bounds, reasonable range.
So what are the current population variances? If we stayed with what we have, are we out of those reasonable bounds?
Connie, you want?
So when you look at redistricting in our districts, really it's a 5% difference. We can stay with what we have because it's within that 5%. I believe it's a 4.6 on the current and the Underhill proposed, but on the commission proposed districts, I'm not sure the percent off the top of my head. I know the median range is about 64,000.
Anybody who spent any time in the military, you know how it is, how fun it is to take a junior person and stick him up on the podium. Connor is my intern down at the county. He works for you guys. If you call and you don't get Jonathan, chances are it's Connor that you're talking to. Pretty sharp guy. Connor, you want to get the
I
microphone?
just want to make sure I understood what she said and what his answer was. So currently, are we within the variance that we don't really need to change if we didn't want to?
We are close. We are within the variance that we could absolutely get not do this year and address this another in the next odd numbered year, in which we would then be able to take time and do it right. She said, "Let's do that and go home." When it gets dark this early, it's like I want to go home too. Go ahead, please.
So realistically, since you're the only one that voted against this, what do you think the odds really are of being able to shift it, even if we write out the letters and do all the...
I think they're pretty good, and here's why. I really do believe that my peers want to do the right thing. Okay, and I've watched them. I tell you what, when we were pushing, then there was a lot of push in this county to go to a mask mandate. A whole lot of people showed up downtown, and they had a rally, and they really pushed to not require the mask mandate that the city was, and people changed. Okay, so I believe that, as much, and the press always likes to drive division, right? Division sells papers, that's always what they're going to push. And as much emphasis as there is on the 4-1 and the standalone and all that kind of thing. The reality is about 90% of the stuff that comes before the board passes 5-0. Okay, and I truly do believe that while there are certainly differences up there, I think that they intend to do the right thing. So if the citizens come out in full force and really tell them that that's not the right thing, I think they're going to want to do the right thing. So I just believe that there is. Never trust people when they tell you, it's a done deal. Okay? Because they told us once that having a bingo parlor out on Presidio Key was a done deal. They told us once that having a 4-lane highway running through that island is a done deal. Okay? Those are, when people tell you it's a done deal, it's because they know that they don't really have it all sewn up. So I think that there is a desire in Escambia County to do the right thing. I think there's a desire on the Board of County Commissioners to do the right thing and do the popular thing, so the right thing by the people. And I think if they hear from enough folks that this isn't the right thing and that this is better for us for the next couple of years, I think they'll change. I do. Because I do believe that at the end of the day, they vote their conscience, they do their best to be honorable in the conduct of their duties.
Joe first here. What is the reality of the move to do this? And doesn't this further divide our area and reduce our political influence, and that we already sort of donated enough to the rest of the county? I don't know how many y'all are familiar with, but we're a cash cow for the rest of the county. I think District 2 already, didn't they get $30 million worth of road money from our district?
The argument is, the question is, does this disenfranchise us out here? And so, interestingly enough, it's always funny when Joe Gopher stands up and he gives his name. It's like, everybody knows Joe. So, the reality is, though, that what he's saying is absolutely true. The southwest sector of this county has always been viewed as out there, okay? If you talk to somebody from Inner area or Perdido, they can probably name 3 or 4 streets in downtown. But if you talk to somebody downtown, they can't name 2 streets out here. Okay? They don't share our equities. Okay? They don't understand the stewardship responsibility that we have with a very delicate beach environment. Okay? When they think about the beach, they think Pensacola Beach. Okay? Pretty sure there's not a whole lot of people out here who want to see us become like Pensacola Beach. Okay? So, yeah, Joe, you're absolutely right that moving us out of District 2, and moving us into District 1, where we then have to share the attention of our commissioner with Beulah, fastest growing part of the county, where the equities up there are all about growth, whereas ours here is stewardship. No, it's absolutely horrible for us. Here's the funny thing, Joe, it's not just bad for us. It's bad for Beulah as well. And I'm pretty sure that we'll have a fairly similar turnout to this tomorrow night when we do one of these up in Beulah. Okay? And I'm doing the one up in Beulah just because we need to do these things. So, it negatively affects Beulah because there is so much work to be done up there. Now, we all saw it here 20 years ago. They said, hey, if you allow all this boom of construction, you'll have all these other tax dollars, and that's going to get us the infrastructure. Okay? But if you're in District 2, if you're a Southwest Sector resident, you already know this lie. And you know it doesn't ever pan out. Because the additional costs of all of the burdens of that development always exceed the additional tax revenue. It just never pencils out. Beulah's in that same situation now. They're where we were 20 years ago when all the condos went up. Okay? The way that it hurts Beulah is the commissioner from that district needs to be very focused on making sure that they don't do to Beulah what was done to Perdido when we overdeveloped and didn't have the infrastructure in place. Okay. The Beulah residents, like I said, I'm sure we'll have a fairly large turnout of them, and I'm actually interested to hear how it is from their perspective. That's how it looks like from my perspective, but I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to their equities.
Our primary road was built in 1924, coming up on 100 years ago, and it's still a 2-lane road. I can't blame that on people from last year.
Are you talking about Perdido Key Drive? Okay, well, I mean, the thing is that Perdido Key Drive, the issue of whether or not that wants to be a 2-lane or 4-lane, that's been fairly heavily argued. I know that not everybody agreed that it needed to stay a 2-lane, but I ran really hard on that, and I mean, it was really one of the defining items of the 2014 election. I won pretty strongly on that. Interestingly enough, in 2018, not a single candidate running against me was willing to go on the record and support the 4-lane. Okay, so it's a done deal. So the point being that now that Perdido Key Drive is a county road, there'll never be the $100 million necessary to make it a 4-lane. And now we are spending our attention and our road dollars in District 2 where they need to be at Blue Angel Parkway and also at Gulf Beach Highway. So, go ahead, Mel.
Thanks, Doug. I wanted to start with an apology and a retraction on something I said at the last meeting at Myrtle Grove, because when Connor got up and was talking about the deviation on this Underhill proposed districts, and explained it very carefully, I could tell that he wasn't making it up. And so I double checked on that, and I had conflated because you did 2 maps, Big Bang. I conflated the first map, which was out of the deviation, and I just wanted to say that I was incorrect, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why you're saying that the commission does not have to redistrict, that they are within, that you guys are within the standard deviation, when David Stafford's office, the county attorney, and the school board's attorney have all made emphatically clear that they feel that legally the county is too far out of deviation and does need, in fact, to redistrict. I don't know, maybe you've got the opinion of another attorney on that. So I have the remaining question, the same question I had in Myrtle Grove, and then just a little bit of a follow-up one. I'm interested to hear how this is any different, say for instance, than the Dollar General. When you told people that there was indeed a chance that something wasn't going to happen, if the county does not take the map that they've got with the 30-day advertisement, we do not redistrict until 2023, and then we're out of deviation, and that can bring on lawsuits. That's at least the opinion of the attorneys in David Stafford's office. So I think I'm just curious as to how you think this is different than that situation. And again, the question that I asked at Myrtle Grove, and there was a follow-up, Mike Weaver asked it. I asked you, if town halls were so important, why didn't you have them? Especially apparently you knew that you were going to be gone for that first meeting. Nobody else knew you were going to be gone, but you did. Why didn't they happen then? You didn't answer when I asked it. You answered Mike Weaver because you were trying to be amicable with the board. You were trying to keep things nice, so you didn't hold any town halls.
We're not doing
So
campaigning.
the question is the only time to hold town halls when it's not amicable? Is that the only time that there's time to meet with citizens, is when you're trying to get something done against your board, and that's an honest question.
It's not even.
Very much on topic.
It's not even a question.
No, it's not.
It's an answer. So I do want to address the one, there was a part of that business there that does warrant an answer. The board contemplated not doing this year, and it would have been just fine if we had chosen not to. I said, hey, I was a big advocate of doing it. I felt like we had time to do it. I mean, I kind of operate in a world where we kind of plan, do, check, act, and we get things done. So I felt like we could. It's fairly clear now that we cannot. Now, the idea is a weird thing in Escambia County. There's, oh, well, and she's right, our attorney will always give this advice. Well, if you do that, then you can open yourself up to lawsuits. Let me tell you guys, if you do anything in America today, you open yourself up to lawsuits. Okay? But if you always do the things that you do by clearly articulating why you're doing it, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're doing it for honorable reasons, and if you do it within the policies and practices that are outlined for you in law, you don't have to worry about getting sued. I get sued a lot in this job. I win every time. Okay? But that's because I'm not going to step up and say something, do something that's not well thought out. This is not well thought out. Okay? We don't have to do this. We can very easily say that based on citizen input, based on citizen reaction, the citizens believe that we can do a better job than this 2 years from now, and therefore we're staying with this. Does anybody really believe that if we made that decision, that we would be opening ourselves up to lawsuits? I mean, it just doesn't hold water. So, Captain, go ahead.
When you spoke about proposed districting is the wrong thing, what language would support wrong thing? Wrong thing is so broad, but what were some of the specifics that you could identify? Because when you say wrong thing, what do you mean? So can you, some key points that we could identify specifically as wrong thing to really push this to the commission in a sensible, documented path?
Yes, Captain, and I will tell you that so while this discussion was going on, I was so, believe it or not, I was speechless. Doesn't happen very often. My wife will tell you it almost never happens. We started working with this program where we're moving the precinct lines block by block and then counting how many black voters and how many white voters were in there. And they sat there and they horse traded black and white voters as if they were chattel. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, it's my job to be a part of this discussion, but I literally have no idea what to say. Because in my experience in the military, we just never had that benefit, right? The guy who's working next to you, getting the mission done, you really don't care a whole lot about his, where he goes to church, color of his skin, stuff like that. So I'm just sitting here watching it, and the more that I'm watching it, and see, here's the weird thing about it. We were told we had to do this. We were told that we had to because, there was this McMillan case, a 1984 case, McMillan versus Escambia County, and that's actually what created our, where you vote for only in your district. And it created the District 3 as our majority-minority district. That was a 1984 ruling, based on the realities of that time. Now, I personally think that you really can't beat racism with racism, right? So if the problem is that we divide ourselves up by skin color, then further, then by applying those same kind of concepts and dividing ourselves up by skin color is probably not something that's going to solve the problem. But hey, I wasn't there. I was a kid in 1984. Okay, you got that? This old guy was a kid in 1984. Okay, that ruling that ordered us to get into this business, that ruling that makes it so that you can only vote for one commissioner in your county in spite of the fact that all 5 of us cast votes that spend your money and affect your life, that ruling in 1984 expired in 1988. It expired in 1988. We are no longer bound by that law. So you asked what was wrong? It's wrong to divide people by skin color. It's wrong to think about Americans based on that. Now, if you go back and watch the video of this discussion, I would just about say, I don't care how far left or right you are on the spectrum, I don't care what color your skin is, if you watch that discussion, I think you're gonna kind of throw up in your mouth a little bit. It was disgusting. That's not who we are as Americans. More interesting than just that fact is, in a world, in an Escambia County that's so diverse as ours is now, why are we only talking about black and white and we're not talking about Hispanic and we're not talking about Asians? It really wasn't the majority-minority district that we were focused on. It was all about black and white. Well, I've never lived my life that way. My dad did. That's the household I grew up in. It never made a whole lot of sense to me. But I thought that was normal until I got out into the world. You okay? So it's just wrong to do it.
What date was that meeting? What date was that meeting?
Hang on a second. I'm not. I don't remember. Connor will get that. Connor, as soon as you get that date, go ahead and let me know. The second meeting was the one that I was sitting in and was just dumbfounded. So, all right. So first and foremost, dividing us up by color. You cannot expect to be prospered in this county if you're going to start with your whole, and the basis of your decision is the color of the skin of the people you're dividing up. Second thing is breaking up our communities, our neighborhoods, just like this right here, just like the 105 situation. This breaks up the west side. It breaks up the traditional southwest sector of the county. Breaking up communities and dividing up communities in such a way that could decrease their political power, their political representation, is always going to be bad. So those are the two primary answers to your question. Now. Next. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, you brought it up a couple of times about the district that's broken out, and you just mentioned it again. I live in Perdido Bay Golf Course, and which is in District 1. And the two proposals that are up there, or the one that's current and the one that's proposed, neither one of those represent me very well, because I'm in District 1, and as you said before, the commissioner for District 1 has spent all this time in the field. I've actually sent emails and things like that about the issues in the Perdido Bay Country Club golf course, and gotten very little or no response on that. So my question is, are any other commissioners having town hall meetings? I haven't seen any advertised. I haven't seen the District 1 commissioner have any town halls advertised. Is there any other commissioners doing this?
I do know that Commissioner Bender did one in District 4, but I think it was a couple of different topics, but I think this was a major part of that discussion. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to what they do on the this, but I know that at least one other commissioner has, yes.
October 5th was the first special joint redistricting meeting, and November 2nd was the second one.
And guys, I'll go ahead and speak to the fact that I wasn't at that first one. I told you guys when I ran for office, I'm a father first. And I spent a lot of my son's life out of the war, and I'm going to be there for my kids. So I'm bragging dad moment. My son was performing in the world finals of jet ski racing in Lake Havasu City, and when I die, I'll be glad that I made that trip, and I will. I won't make an apology for putting that ahead of this. I honestly believe, based on the snickers and the comments that were made when this first came up, that nobody would think that what is now before us made sense. It didn't make it was laughable when it was brought up. It seemed fairly unreasonable that anybody would have gone down this path. The fact that I wasn't there to represent you guys is an even more important reason why this should never have been drawn in my absence. Go ahead, Tom.
For the folks that don't know, years ago, that district that the commissioners were proposing, tell me if I'm wrong, Doug, but wasn't that W.D. Childers' move possibly to gain more power or whatever the reason was? But it's been that way for years, folks, until it was changed, so it's not something new. Am I correct in saying that that's the district that W.D. Childers changed back in the day, and we had it that way once before? And I wasn't a young kid then, I can tell you, it wasn't all that bad. I'm not agreeing with or against you, because I haven't heard enough about it yet. I want to make one other comment. You said you're not representative. We had Jeff Regas come out the other day. I live in the same area you do. That's a very dangerous intersection coming out of the neighborhood. This gentleman beside me is the president of the Homeowners Association, Tom Leachy, and he spent over an hour with us addressing just that intersection where people have almost been killed. So he's always answered our calls. If you have any problems, let me know.
That's the email I sent.
I'll be glad to address it with you. Wasn't that the old district before it was changed? That was proposed?
Thank you. So one of the interesting discussion points that's come up, one of the discussion points that came up on this thing was that this used to be District 1. 20 years ago, that was. Honestly, the things that went on during the WD days, I know some people think that stuff fondly. I don't. But I have to ask you, think about, okay, do you want to go back and think that going back to 20 years ago makes sense? Because what was 20 years ago? I'll tell you what wasn't 20 years ago. The town of Beulah wasn't about 30,000 people, and it will be by the time we're done, by the time we have another census. 20 years ago, we didn't have a massive population out there on the key itself. You guys, I don't know if you all are tracking this or not, but one of the really big things that has happened to us because of COVID is a lot of rental product on the key is now owner occupied. Now, will that go back and will that change back to You know, and people going back to Atlanta or whatnot, but hey, I don't know. Okay. But you talk to any of your waitresses and whatnot around here and ask them when the off season is now. There is no off season. Okay? So 20 years ago, in a lot of ways, I think Perdido was a better place. But we are never going to be that what we were 20 years ago. And what Beulah is becoming now, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Greater Beulah is going to have a larger population than the city of Pensacola within not too much time. You look at what's going on up there. Don't just look at the houses that have been built. Go and actually look at houses that have been permitted and not yet started. And you know, just like this stuff across the street, you're like, who would ever want to live like that? God knows I wouldn't. That stuff's going to sell out as soon as it hits the market. Okay? All that stuff up in Beulah, selling out as quick as it hits the market. I don't get it. I wouldn't want to live in that cookie cutter stuff. I wouldn't want to live in Beulah with no amenities, but it is happening. So thinking back to how things were 20 years ago, man, if we had the wisdom of today here in Perdido Key, and we didn't listen to all that build garbage that was being pumped down our throats, we'd have a lot more access. Okay? So yeah, it used to be that way. Okay? A lot of things used to be different in Escambia County. Our focus need not be on where we were 20 years ago. Our focus when we talk about this needs to be, where do we anticipate being in 10 years? Because that's what actually matters more.
Over.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to let y'all know that I was at that meeting on November 2nd. And that was the most disgusting meeting I've ever seen for any type of, it was like an auction for black and white voters. Lumen May was literally up there with his fingers in his mouth going, give me those 2 blocks. Give me those other 2 blocks. How many voters? It's amazing. Y'all need to go. Y'all need to go to this next meeting. You know, I disagree with Douglas on plenty of stuff. Build, that's me. That's me. I mean, people are making babies. People want to move to this county. They want to move to this state for freedom. Not for the last person in and close and lock the door. They're wanting to move here because they're sick of wearing masks. They're sick of being told by their government that they can't have a building here. They would like to be able to, that unfortunately, me and Doug disagreed on those type of things. But I'm telling you, he's right on that redistricting meeting. And y'all need to get as many people as you can. I'm going to try to get it, because I'd rather see it stay the way it is and put more thought into it, because they're ramming this thing down fast. And 2 commissioners in particular were literally biting their nails hoping to get this thing done quickly. So I'm just asking y'all to get some people up there.
Guys, it really is something that I recommend everybody go and watch. It is, and I'll tell you, I'm ashamed of my own silence. You ever walk out, somebody says a real sexist joke or a racist joke at a party, and you didn't respond, or you made it seem like it was okay? Man, I tell you, it is, that's how I felt at that meeting. So please, make sure that you go and watch that. Go ahead, Pat.
All right, that's good. My name is Pat Owen. Recently, for the last several years, I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Florida, Alabama Transportation Planning Organization. When I first moved out here, I was kind of amazed that the schools were on the other side of the road from the citizens that sent to the school. That's done. And I said, so when the new redistricting came, I said, hey, Barstow's not split anymore. The schools are in one district now, and Sorrento's now in one district. But it does not solve the problem of how you're going to take care of 6.2 miles that the county and the state traded, not necessarily opened any comment from the TPO. They stood up behind the door. So the county grabbed 6.2 miles that they're going to maintain and gives up 2.1 miles up in Beulah. Now, how am I supposed to explain the arithmetic there about maintaining our tax dollars in the county to maintain, 3 times what it is that you had in Beulah? Well, now, with this new map, the middle one there, I'm saying, well, you know what?
Yeah, we got the schools in one district, Barsfield is one district now, it's not split up. That's why the kids park on the north side by Pretty Bay Country Club is part of Barsfield, what was due to the county. That's not together. However, you got a lot of stuff to think about here. And at first I thought it was a good idea. I said, no, wait a minute. How are we going to make sure that 6.2 miles is going to be maintained during the winter? How is Inouye Island going to get their new sewage system out there when I got all this other stuff going on in Beulah? And that's right, there's going to be an explosion of population there. So I'm not so happy now with what the commission proposed. I kind of like Doug's idea of putting all the schools in one district, that be including the new high school, the library we included this time in that same district, now in Barsfield, but also the new park up there on Gower. All these are the same, geographical area for the families that send their kids to those schools. So that makes more sense to me now. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
I was just wondering, can get your thoughts, when you look at the map, why is Santa Rosa Island and Pensacola Beach in District 4 when really if you look at the map, it logically ought to fall in District 2? It's right off. I mean, it's a long way from the end of District 4 down to Pensacola.
Well, I can certainly see, there's certainly logic in that, and I'll tell you, anytime that you're going to look at, no matter what map gets drawn, there's going to be parts of it that don't make sense. But I'll tell you, as a Perdido resident, I absolutely do not want to share the attention of my county commissioner with that beast out there. Okay? Very, very different equities. And it's always weird to me when people say, compare Perdido and Pensacola Beach. The two beaches could not be any more different in every way that you can possibly measure them. So, the fact that it's aligned with District 4, it certainly looks a little odd here, unless you consider the fact that the bridge, that connects them, that is the logical one that is contiguous with in spite of the water. So, who's got the microphone? May, go ahead.
Hi. Yes, and continuing on that, all summer long, Commissioner Burgosh talked about how he went to Pensacola Beach every Saturday to play tennis at Portofino, I assume. And so he's on Pensacola Beach every Saturday, but he knows nothing about Perdido Key.
I want to May, I love you. And for those that don't know, the fact that we have a bike path going out there, it's her fault.
No, it's that one.
That's entirely so. I love you, but let's make sure. This is not about Burgosh, and it's not about Underhill.
I know, but
and so but I think that the more logical point there that you're making though is, where's your attention?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where's your attention? And if you look at the numbers, the precinct numbers, the number of votes down here in 105, and the number of votes up here. And then think about what happens over the next 10 years is every single election, your votes down here are going to count a little bit less and a little bit less. Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, this job is way harder than I thought it was, right? Because I know about my equities out here in Perdido where I live. I used to live in Shandell. I know about the equities there. Having to take the time, and Jonathan gets all the credit for this, is grabbing me by the nape of the neck, almost literally, and driving me through and introducing me to the other neighborhoods. We are diverse enough as it is. And it's hard when you've got the Perdido equities, and then you've got your Myrtle Grove Mayfair equities. Our equities out here are stewardship. Their equities down there are much more on fixing infrastructure that's failed, old infrastructure that's failed. Interestingly enough, if you look at the pockets of poverty map, Perdido Key is the highest per capita income anywhere in the Tri-County area. Okay? So higher than East Hill, higher than Pensacola Beach. Also in my district are census tracts that are among the very lowest per capita income. So lots of diversity there that really makes the job very challenging. Okay? I can assure you, if you've got the very distinct equities of Perdido Key, and the very distinct equities of the new and burgeoning Beulah, the idea that one man would be able to handle both of those equally and fairly, there just isn't that much money to go around, folks. And you heard it already in terms of how the Perdido Bay Country Club is felt. Now, I mean, yeah, we can have some, you can debate whether or not, it would work out better, but here's what you can absolutely be certain of. Okay, your issues in Perdido Bay Country Club, this neighborhood was permitted to have a 4-way stoplight at Choctaw. And all of that building back there was designed for traffic to come out of Choctaw. Now, if you live on Choctaw, you hate this discussion. Okay, but this is the truth. Doug Ford Drive was never intended to carry the kind of load that it's carrying. You can sit here and talk about partial solutions. Out at Floribama, we talked for years about having an overcross, right, where people walk over. You can talk about that till the cows come home. That wasn't the solution. We put a solution in out there, by the way, and over the last year or so, you're not seeing near the backups. That solution was something that was actually doable because we divorced ourselves from the narrative, the false narrative of the past. I promise you guys, I'm not running again, anybody who tells you that they can fix that neighborhood without opening Choctaw, selling you snake oil. Just can't happen. Yes, sir. You want to pat? I'm sorry, maybe we
yeah, I was going to say also, you all may not understand that what Commissioner Underhill has done for Perdido Key with zoning changes, and there was no zoning change there, that was required for the Dollar General. They were already zoned commercial, and you fought them as long as you could. But on Perdido Key, you have had a commitment to no zoning changes and maintaining our building cap. And with a new commissioner, we will not be guaranteed that, because those of us who have worked with planning and zoning know how important the commissioner's opinion is to planning and zoning. And there are areas of Perdido Key, particularly River Road, that are not included in the Habitat Conservation Plan, that are subject to, they don't have the mouse issue where they're more carefully monitored. And so changing commissioners, we're not guaranteed the great security that we've had for 6 years.
Yeah, well,
we have to thank you for that. And can't you just, maybe you could run again, and then we could go make the argument that they're taking you out of your district. And I said that about every ECUA member.
I swore 7 years ago that it would be 2 and no more, and you've always got to be careful. And there's a constant pressure. Oh, you got to run for this, got to run for that. Politicians were never intended to be professionals. Okay, it's supposed to be representative of the people because you change us like diapers, right? For the same reason. Okay, you've got to change out. And what that means is, I'm looking around this room, somebody in this room needs to step up. And everybody else in this room who's not stepping up, you need to make sure you brought up the Perdido Key Master Plan. You may laugh all you want about that beach mouse, but that beach mouse is the only thing that's saving us from not becoming destined. Okay? Silly mouse, whatever, tell cartoons, do whatever you want to do with it, but recognize that mouse is your best friend unless you want to become the next Destin. It's the one thing that's holding us back. Okay. Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Can you speak to if there's any significant contention between districts 3, 4, and 5 over these proposals, or is this almost 100% District 1 versus District 2?
Well, that's it. You can watch the meetings and certainly figure that out for yourselves, right? But yeah, bottom line is, I was actually surprised at the numbers. They weren't all that far off. I thought that we were seeing a massive gentrification downtown and that our black population was moving up 110. I thought that the massive growth in Beulah and up in North County were much larger than what actually showed up in the census. So the reality is it was a matter of a little bit of work. Really, a little bit of work. And in fact, had there only been a little bit of work on this map, Mel, try to keep it to yourself. So if we'd have just started with this map and fixed and done some tweaks, right, then we wouldn't have a problem. There's really, honestly, and funny because I was out talking about this with Lumen in the last meeting, and I was talking to him about the fact that District 3, realistically, should extend all the way down to the water line, right? And Lumen himself said, well, Commissioner, this really isn't about my district. The only problem we got here is yours. strange way of putting that, but it's actually true. This right here is the only real contention on the commissioner's map. So it's kind of that doctor's thing, right? First do no harm. That's what we should be thinking about. First do no harm. There would be almost no pushback at all on this map, on anything about this map, except for this issue. Realistically, 95 and the rest of 67, 73, these folks that live there, those are our Perdido neighbors, and they ought to be in District 2 with the rest of Perdido. If we'd have done that, sir, this would have been a walk in the park.
Yeah, I want to follow on something that Larry said. He's actually proposing to keep the current districts, if that's viable to do, and if that doesn't affect the school board districts also. They could adopt the same districts as they have now, going forward for another, at least 2 years. Give you some time to study this and really look at the projections for balancing the populations and things. But if we make a change, and I don't care which one it is, either change, there will be a number of people that will, particularly those in District 2 and in District 4, that will have a representative they didn't vote for 2 years, at least 2 years, imposed on it, that they had no opportunity to vote for. So how do we mitigate that condition? Because, and that's pretty key in their area, mainly I think, but there are some other areas in these map changes that put people in another district. You didn't vote for that person that's representing you now, they were opposed on you. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and that's I mean, it's a good point. And I've really chewed on that since the first time you brought it up in that first meeting. And here's the problem. No matter when you redistrict, that reality is going to take place. So there really is no way to avoid that. But what you can avoid is doing more than you have to achieve the objectives. Okay? So there's no reason to make the radical decision with regard to 105 when it's not actually necessary to achieve the objectives of balancing the districts. The other thing about that argument that you show is you kind of, and I'm highly cognizant of this, although it's funny, when you get elected, everybody who calls the office for the first 2 years says, hey, I voted for you. And if all of those were true, I would have like gotten 4 times as many votes as there are in the district. But the truth is too, that after every election, there's somewhere between 30 and 49% of the people who are represented by somebody they didn't elect. And so we have to be cognizant of that too. It's a good point, and yet I couldn't figure out a way to kind of chew through that and find a solution that would resolve that and still get redistricting done. So again, that's why you got to go ahead and come back to what actually, what this disenfranchises no one, and allows us to then spend more time doing it right and coming up with something that the people can get behind. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Steve, and I've been talking to the commissioners, at least 3 of them. And I got a call about 4 hours ago today, telling me that Doug Underhill is the one pushing to do this redistricting. Telling me that he's the one who's pushing for it. It doesn't sound to me like he's pushing for it. Does it sound like that to anybody else? No. So it sounds to me like we can actually push this out to 23 and do it in the next odd year. So I don't know why we're in a rush. Everyone tells me in a rush that we're in a rush. The commissioner I talked to, he called me because he doesn't want me pissed off. But I am pissed because, full disclosure, I'm running for county commissioner, possibly against Mr. Underhill. I don't know who it's going to be. But he also has the right to run again, and they're drawing him out. So, so I'm not for that. I have one beef with Doug, and that's just one. But I don't think that he should be drawn out of the district so he can't run. And I don't think I should be either. But I try to stay out of this because I'm a candidate, and like he believes, I don't think they should be making concessions for me or for Chance or anybody else. But I do know this, that we could put this out till 23. And there are some political motives for not doing that. That's all.
So, and Steve, I gotta say, it would be kind of fun to see a debate of too many commanders. that would be a very interesting. I bet we would cover an awful lot of issues and not personalities. It would be pretty awesome. It's not going to happen, I guarantee. Because I'm going to keep my promise. But and so I want to make sure that so again, redistricting Steve out of a race that he's already raised money for, put up signs for, things like that. Yep, that's what this does. Personally, that does not meet the equities that I consider important because, just for the same reason, it's not for the incumbents. But I want to I don't know, it wasn't part of that conversation that any commissioner said. I was adamant that we could do this right, and I pushed for us going ahead and getting it done because it's our job. We're supposed to do it. The census is done, we get the numbers, we do the job. Yeah. So, go back 3 months, yeah, I was saying there's no reason we can't do this. Okay? But when I was saying that, I thought the definition of this was going to be taking what we had, looking at the numbers, and doing something logical. I can assure you there is no good push for this. Now, Mr. Schroeder, I don't know exactly what that commissioner said, but I'll tell you this, if any commissioner said that I'm the one pushing to get this done this season, that is either gross misinformation or an outright lie. I can't say which because I don't know the heart of the person who said it.
I think you know the heart of that person.
Yes, ma'am.
I first want to comment, I appreciate you, I do, living on the Key, I appreciate it staying a 2-lane. I know it gets to be hectic and things back up, but it's so much easier pulling out and crossing 1 lane than 4. So thank you. My comment is, I didn't do a lot of research for this, I just found out. You mentioned this redistricting is due to the census. So apparently D2 had an increase in population according to the census, is that correct?
No, the big changes were D1 and D5 grew substantially.
Then if D1 grew, why is it grabbing Key?
That's a great question.
And my second comment on that, if you notice, this is just my take or opinion on it, it appears that it's a money grab because it's grabbing all the condos, the tax revenue, everything from the Key, and that's it. I mean, why grab just that? The whole thing doesn't make sense, so I really hope that people can pull together and contact the commissioners. I'm not here to say what's right and wrong, but personally, I think what's proposed currently is bad for those of us on Perdido Key and in Arrarity.
I certainly can agree with you more. Yeah, and that's my point behind this. This didn't have to be hard. D1 and D5 were a little on the big side because of the growth. And then if you look at your planned growth, rooftops that are already permitted, that trend was going to continue. Pretty clear, pretty simple. Okay, so it really was a simple matter of D1 losing a couple precincts to D2, which, generally speaking, the folks in those precincts I think would be well received, regardless of whether it's me as a commissioner, or Mr. Stroberg, or Mr. Walsh, Ms. Pino, or anybody else, right? It doesn't matter. Those folks are Perdido folks. So picking up these precincts would have very easily balanced the growth that's taking place in District 1. Likewise, the same kinds of things could have been done to address the growth up in D5. It just really didn't have to be this hard. It's kind of funny about this job. When you focus on governance, it's not very hard. When you focus on politics, it becomes very difficult and divisive.
I've got one. I was just going to tactical question, and I don't know if there's an impact or not, but we get another Ivan or Sally. How are we impacted by having D1 representing all of us, and a split, to the Grand Lagoon versus the Rarity, different district? Is there an impact there at a tactical level when we get our next hurricane?
Those of us who choose to live here on the coast take an enormous risk. I look at a lot of people in this room who I know have lost the better part of their house. okay, myself included. We take a different approach. Those of us who live right along the coast, we recognize resiliency as a personal responsibility, but we also recognize that we've got to get the government has to move quickly, okay? Up in FEMA's got this really cool rule where they say, hey, we don't have to do any storm cleanup behind the gated community. You know what? That rule looks great from Washington, D.C., and that was the rule in this last bill. Okay? And man, I wish I could take some of the credit, but the reality is that Janice Gilley, unquestionably the best administrator we have ever had in this county, Janice Gilley and I worked very hard to address that issue, because the taxpayers on the other side of those gates at Herons Forest, on Emery Island, they're paying federal taxes too. Okay? And we were able to, I don't think it was a perfect solution, but I tell you what, it took a lot of tenacity to get there. Now, if 95% of my voters aren't affected that way, is it as big a deal to me? I mean, let's just be honest about how many hours there are in a day and how much attention one person can have. A good politician is going to tell you that your issue is the most important issue on his plate, and then he'll go to the next person and he'll say your issue is the most important issue. We all know that if everything's a top priority, there are no priorities. So, no, Brooke, honestly, District 2, the Southwest sector, needs to be represented by somebody who totally gets this lifestyle. Not just the risks associated with it, but the stewardship associated with our waterways and the personal resiliency that we have to be able to take care of ourselves. So, yeah, now, I cannot imagine being that a commissioner who doesn't understand this lifestyle would have put in the kind of effort that we get when it's us. So, yes, sir.
So, can we get a plan of attack and move this forward? Because I think everybody in here is pretty much in agreement that we don't want the middle proposal. So, you, Jonathan, and Colin, y'all got a plan of attack, letter writing, go to the meeting, whatever it is?
First and foremost, emails to every single commissioner, myself included. Okay, and don't kid yourself when people say, "Oh, you know, I don't put my finger in the way." Don't kid yourself. Staff members actually count numbers of emails in favor and number of emails against. Probably, I don't even want to hear the stories that Connie might be able to tell among the interns and whatnot. So, absolutely, send those emails first and foremost. That the right thing to do. And hey, here's one thing, funny. Okay, so if in fact there are commissioners saying that I'm the one pushing for it, say that you totally disagree with Commissioner Underhill, and that's a good way to get some votes. so go ahead and say, hey, I totally disagree with Commissioner Underhill. This does not need to be pushed forward. We need to stick with the existing current districts and hit this again in 2 years, where we've got time to do it before anybody like Mr. Stroberger jumps in when there's a good talking point on that. We have an opportunity to do it in such a way that does not bind ourselves to a 1984 racist decision. Okay? Whatever of these talking points, whatever of these data points are meaningful to you, get that in an email and send it to all 5 commissioners. CC, this is a great one for, I'm sure that it would make a great Andy Marlette cartoon. So send it to the PMJ, contact WEAR, and any other means that you have to get that out there. Now, a lot of folks that I know in here are also members of organizations and groups. Okay, I see the president of Radio Key Association is here. Now, obviously, PKA doesn't get politically involved. This ain't politics. This is governance. Okay, so you don't have to get politically involved. And I strongly recommend that you stay away from things like Doug's awesome or Doug's a poopy face, Jeff's awesome or Jeff's a poopy face. Because here's the thing, you're stuck with this long after you're stuck with the 2 of us. Okay, so keep it professional, keep it focused on the issues, and propose, because we always say in politics, you can't beat somebody with nobody. You can't beat a bad idea without a good idea. Here's the good idea. The good idea is step back and get this right, guys. because we don't have to make this problem worse with that proposal. Does that answer your question? All right. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Albert, and I'm a long-term resident here in the Rarity area, and I'm just kind of wondering, I'm not really for or against it, because I just found out about this maybe 3 weeks ago, but I've heard the argument made about Perdido Key becoming like Destin and development, and like I said, I'm a surfer, free diver, spearfisher. I worked last 27 years at Cermak in Jacksonville Naval Station Mayport. I moved back here, went to one of my local breaks to surf, and I'm like, wow, look at this. You know, there's plenty of development. You know, so for the argument to be that there's going to be some more development here, you know, and that would be why we should be against the plan. I just don't see, you know, I'm seeing development already. You know, things that I know there's going to be change, but you know, I don't see a lot of single-family homes built on the Key. I see condominiums. So I'm just needing a little more, maybe a little bit more reason to just make a decision to be for or against it right now.
Okay, no, great points. And so what I would recommend that you want to do is go talk to somebody who lived in Destin about 25 years ago and ask them if it could have gotten any worse. Oh no, it couldn't get any worse. It's already gone. Oh crap. And then it got worse. Okay. There are a couple of mechanisms that are protecting us from overdevelopment out there. Okay. Habitat Conservation Plan, Perdido Key Master Plan, and the building cap. Okay, there's a cap on the island set in place by a judge that once we built that many residential units, that's it, party's over. Okay? The basis of the building cap was the capacity of the road. If the road ever goes to 4 lanes, the building cap, the basis of the building cap, out the window, take it to court, building cap is gone. Okay? Now that building cap is extremely dangerous, right? Because there's gonna come a time, my property, I got an acre and a half on River Road. Got 1 house on it, mine. By law, I can build up to 7 units on there. I cannot imagine what kind of a person would destroy that property by putting more units on it. Okay? If you think about it, that means I've got 6 additional, I have property rights for 6 additional units on my property. So if we do an upzone, if we give anybody additional rights to build on that island, and that building cap's in place, you're taking away my rights. Now what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a position where you absolutely are going to go to court and lose, because you're taking away property rights that already exist. We protect the property rights of those of us who already live there by not allowing build more. And like I said, it can get a lot worse. Just look at Orange Beach, even 10 years ago. Okay? And the more that we build, the more that we stuff into that 5-pound sack, the less access that we, as the people who actually live here and are stewards of it, are going to have. I want to speak to one item that you mentioned, though, about what you see being built out there are condos. Actually, what you see being built on the beach are single-family homes. There is one condo going up. It's the only condo that's been permitted during the 7 years that I've been in office. Think about that. We went through the whole Trump boom time, and we didn't have a single condo built on that island. Now we've got one going up. What you see is there's some large single-family homes going up, and that's a good thing. Those the properties that get those houses built on them are not going to make that, those are breaks in the concrete wall, okay? So when you see a single family home going up there, you'd rather see it be natural, but man, that's a whole lot better than another condo tower. Same thing that I say about this over here. You may not like this over here, and God knows I wouldn't want to live in it. Gosh, I hope I don't get sued when I'm getting into somebody's business practice. I wouldn't want to live in it, but they're single family homes. And I would rather have 93, I think it is, of those than 533 units, which was already previously permitted to be in 2 condo towers. It's not great, but it's a heck of a lot better than what was going to be there. So, you know, and this is the stewardship thing. It's not, you know, when I first ran for office, it was funny because I was called the no-growth guy. I'm no growth Underhill. And my argument was, I just want smart growth. I mean, we know we've got a building cap. We know we have a federally established habitat conservation plan that we have to abide by. So don't try to play silky little games. Don't try to be all smooth and figure out ways to get around it. Just play by the rules.
And if we play by the rules, which we've done for the last 7 years on Perdido Key, you can build what you want to build within reason. You're able to prosper. We're able to continue to move that balance back to a larger balance of single family as opposed to the condos. Okay? Condos aren't evil, they're not bad. But just like when you end up with too many rental properties in your neighborhood, it changes the nature of the neighborhood. Right? When you end up with too many condos, it becomes the culture of the island. And it would be a travesty to trade our culture for the culture of that wall of condos that is Orange Beach. So the thing is, a lot of research to be done there. And one of the things I'd recommend if you're a new guy and you're really focusing on the water especially, you need to get to know this guy named Tim Day. He is our environmental guy for the island. Take a look at there are quite a few videos that we've done at the county that describe things like the Habitat Conservation Plan, and that those things will explain to you, really get you deeply informed on the stewardship responsibilities of being here. Because, I mean, it's a burden we carry. You go to Pensacola Beach, at 5 a.m., there are these 3 great big tractors with these massive vacuums that pick up all the filth and trash that gets dropped on that beach. Every single morning. Huge expense. You know who does that for Perdido Key? We do. The citizens do. And I think our model is much better than theirs. All right, we covered a lot of stuff. Anybody else? So we know what the takeaway is, guys. We've got to inform the commission that this is not good. We don't want it. It's better to stick with this and then take time over the next 2 years to come up with a great plan, because Escambia County deserves great. We don't deserve rushed, and we certainly don't deserve something that's driven by political forces instead of governance. Thanks a lot for your time, guys. I appreciate it. Good to see everybody.